All right, so he wants to see a VWAP strategy. All right, yeah, well, so Margie, I don't make things up in this room. So if you have some explicit rules of a VWAP system that you would like to see, please go ahead and just type out those rules. Okay, so it looks like what Samarji is looking for is a crossover of price, but also wanting the VWAP to be sloping up. So if price is crossing up, then the VWAP being sloping up, and then if price is crossing down, to confirm that the VWAP is sloping downward. So with that, let's get BloodHound open. All right, and let's see. First thing you want to do is provide a name, for your system here. So let me hit the change button here. Today's workshop date. All right, so now that we have a file name in place for our work to save to, I'm going to switch over to the Logic tab here, and let's see here. All right, I guess I'll just call this VWAP example. So if you want to, verify the slope of the VWAP, pretty straightforward. We're going to use a slope solver here. Let's grab that, connect that in, and let's name this solver. Go. All right, and then we'll plug in the VWAP. All right, now of course, make sure that whatever settings, properties that you're using on the chart for the VWAP, that you match the same settings being used within BloodHound. For example, like the session, right? There's different types of sessions. Let's see, the resolution. Yeah, there's different types of resolutions there as well. And probably most important is the trading hours instance as well. So, look at that. That is not showing up correctly. So, we'll have to see what's going on there. So I guess for now, the only trading hour session that can be used with BloodHound is just the default property there, which is use data series settings there. So if you want to use a custom trading hours session, currently, as we can see, for some reason, BloodHound's not reading those different trading hour sessions there. So we will have to work on that and see what's going on, why that's not showing up anymore. All right. So anyways, once you have the couple of settings matched up there, then we have the VWAP line already selected there. So we can click OK, and let me save that. Cancel, and let's see. Okay, yeah. So we got this kind of typical index out of range here. I think that's probably just because this is a multi-time frame indicator. So, but anyways, so if you get those index out of range errors, all you gotta do is just reload the chart like so, and bingo. All right. So now let's get this back open again. All right, so now we can see, with the slope solver here, so if the VWAP is sloping down, you're going to get a short, and if the VWAP is sloping up, right, you're going to get a long output. So there's the slope, and, as we can see so far, it looks like, at least in this area of the chart, whenever price crosses that VWAP line, you know, the VWAP is sloping upward when price crosses above, and it looks like the VWAP slopes downward if price crosses down below. But let's check some more of the chart here, see if we have some more examples. Oh, there we go, there's some more examples. Yeah, so far things look to be consistent. Let's see. Yeah, this overnight stuff is probably pretty messy. There we go. All right, so here's yesterday. So it looks pretty consistent here, where whenever price crosses above, the VWAP will start sloping upward, and whenever price crosses below, the VWAP is going to slope downward. So anyways, so it is what it is. So there is, you know, the slope of the VWAP, you know, to confirm with the trend. So the next step would be, you know, grabbing a crossover solver as well. So let's grab that crossover, and I'm going to connect that in. And so basically we're going to do the close crossing over the VWAP there. All right, so we'll do the closing price crossing over the VWAP. So input A, that will be price, right? So the type of input is going to be price, and we'll leave it on the closing price of the bar. And input B, well, that will be our VWAP indicator. So let's go back in here and select the VWAP, and we're not changing any of the settings or the properties there. The VWAP line's already selected for us, so we're good to go there. And so there is all of the crossovers. Here, let's stretch this out a little bit. All right. So, all right, obviously lots of crossovers. And so we have the slope, we have a crossover solver, and next let's grab an AND node, like so. All right, so some of these did get filtered out there, some of those crossovers, if we take a look. Right, so there's all the crossovers. So we can see that several of these cross aboves, right? So some of these long crossovers here do get filtered out when we add the slope of the VWAP. There we go. Right, so we can see some of these long signals right over here do get filtered out. Yeah, like this long crossover there does get filtered out. So, yeah, so we can see that the VWAP isn't always sloping upward when price crosses above here. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And so the other part was to add some other indicator to avoid a sideways chop. So let me go through this. Let's see, the RSI or the MFI, or moving average. All right, so the RSI. Okay, let's add the RSI onto my chart here. And so with the RSI, I guess what, we'll just say anything above 50 maybe, something like that, probably good enough. There we go. All right, so I have a horizontal line sitting on the 50 level there, just for reference. And all right, let's see here. Let me build that crossover solver again. All right, so let's see. So if we're going to add something like the RSI to this, where we want the RSI above the 50 level, right, or whatever level you want to utilize there. So typically, right, with oscillators like this, and you're wanting your oscillator to be above or below some level, right? So again, in this example, we'll use the 50 level. Then what we're looking for is for the RSI to be above the 50 threshold level, right? So the 50 is the threshold level, right, that we're using here. So we're going to use the threshold solver for this. And so let's connect that in. There. All right, so we're looking for the RSI to be, I guess here, greater than 50. All right. So, yeah, so let's switch the SMA indicator out for the RSI. All right, there we go. And of course, remember to, adjust any settings here. And we're going to use the RSI line. And now that we're looking for it to be above the 50 level. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 50 in this threshold solver twice. So, and keep in mind, pretty soon, within a couple of months, this threshold solver is going to get a whole new makeover with BloodHound 8.2. So, but for now, the way the threshold solver is now, we're going to put 50 in there twice. And putting 50 in twice, the reason why we do that is because it strips out the fuzzy logic portion of BloodHound. It kind of prevents the fuzzy logic portion of BloodHound. So, so that's the simple answer as to why we're putting 50 in twice. And for the outputs, right, we're looking for the RSI to be greater than 50, right? So we're putting 1 in for the long output of greater than 50, and the same for the short output, right? Because the RSI is a non-directional indicator, right? It doesn't tell you the direction, of the chart. It's just a strength, right? It's a strength indicator. So we want both a long and a short output there. So, right, and we can see on the chart, right, whenever the RSI is above that 50 level, then we're getting a long and a short at the same time there. Right. So the next step would be to just connect that in to the AND node like so. Right, and so now we have even more filtering. So we can see here, right, a bunch of short signals disappeared. So if we disconnect this RSI threshold solver, right, we can see 3 of those short signals show up. And if we add that in there, right, then that's going to filter that out. So there we go. So there's Samanji's example there of using the RSI as a kind of a sideways noise filter there. All right, so that would be the, I guess this would be the entry signal here. We also want to see an exit signal. Yeah, when price hits the second standard deviation line. Okay. All right, so let's rename this logic template here. All right, so this would be our VWAP entry here. And so we're going to make another logic template here. And we'll call this, all right, this second standard deviation exit. Actually, let's see what yeah, actually NinjaTrader calls it the standard deviation 2. So there we go. I'll just reverse those. All right, so we have to go early when the market opens here to see, yeah, the VWAP. Actually, yeah, let me make a quick adjustment here. Actually, there, we close that out. So I'm going to make the standard deviation 2 lines a little thicker here, so they stand out a little better. There we go. All right, so we're simply looking for, as Sarmaji states it, just for price to hit the line there. So we don't need a crossover, we don't actually need a crossover, but we just want to see if price had penetrated the line. And so if we're comparing price right to the lower line down here, to the lower line, right, then what we're looking for is for the low of the bar to be right below the standard deviation 2 lower line, right? So we're comparing the low price of the bar to the lower standard deviation number 2 line there, right? And if price is right above, then we'd be looking at the high of the bar to be above the upper standard deviation line there, right? So we're effectively, what we're doing is we're comparing the low of the bar to the lower line, or the high of the bar to the upper line. So we're going to use a comparison solver for that, right? The comparison solver. So we'll connect that in, and let's give this a name here. All right, so I name this. So for a, let's see, for a long, well, this is an exit. Yeah, well, in any case. So we're comparing, in this one solver, we're going to compare the high price of the bar to the upper standard deviation number 2. And at the same time, we're going to compare the low price of the bar as well to the standard deviation lower line, right? So now, since these are exit signals here, right? So when price comes down and hits the lower line, right? We're gonna be in a short trade, right? So, for example, let's see here. Well, price didn't come down all the way, but let's just say, right, that we got a short entry signal from price crossing below the VWAP, right? So if we're in a short position, then when price comes down and hits the lower second deviation line there, then to exit a short position, we want a long signal, right? So exit signals are the opposite of your entries, right? So if our entry is a short signal here, let's see here, yeah. So if our entry is a short signal here, then the exit is going to be a long. Right. So let's see here. So let's start setting up this solver here. So the input A is going to be price, and so we want to generate a long signal, right, when the low of the bar goes below the VWAP standard deviation number 2 lower line, right? So for a long signal, we're going to use the low of the bar, and if price, right, crosses above and generates a long entry signal, then when price goes up and touches the upper standard deviation 2 line, then the exit signal for that is going to be a short. So short signals here, we're going to use the high of the bar. So we're going to set the short to the high. Right? And now for input B, that's going to be our VWAP indicator. So there's our VWAP. And so now we need to select the correct plots here. So we're using the upper line to generate a short signal because it's an exit. And we'll use the lower line here to generate a long signal because it's an exit. Now we need to adjust our outputs here, like so. So we're going to effectively kind of reverse the outputs here, right? So, right, so here we go. So here we can see, right, price is touching the lower second deviation line there. So if we look at the outputs here, right, why did we reverse these outputs here? Well, if we read them, we want, right, the low price to go below the lower second deviation line there. So we want A to be less than B, right? A is the low price of the bar. We want A to be less than our VWAP line, right? Well, the second deviation lower VWAP line. So that's why we reversed these. Reverse the outputs like so. And so basically, since these are exit signals, that's all we need, right? So, for the most part, exit signals usually don't need to be cleaned up here. And in this case, they don't, right? Because we're not going to get any entry signals when price is down, below the second deviation lower line. So we can just leave these exit signals as they are, just like that. So let's see if we have some other examples, actually. Let me save that. Let's close that out. And here we go. All right, so there's the exit, right? And let's take a look at the entry. Oh, the RSI was not above 50, so we didn't get an entry signal there. Well, in any case, well, here, let's just do this. There. So if we disconnect the RSI filter there, right? So that would be our our entry signal there. There. And then if we switch over to the exit, and there we go. And there is the long signal to exit that short position there. And we connect that back up. All right, I'll see if I can find some better examples here. Yeah, I don't have a short entry for this, but we do have price hitting that lower second deviation line. So if I switch over to the exit signals like so, yeah, there we go. So there's a bunch of exit signals. And, oh, this is early in the morning. Yeah, no wonder. And so as far as today goes, right, there's a bunch of exit signals as price goes below that second deviation line there. So, and let's see if we actually have a short entry signal. No, we don't. We have a long. So, but in any case, I know the VWAP indicator can be hard to work with sometimes. At least in the workshop here, trying to get examples out of it. But just to kind of recap here, right? It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple system here. So, right. So if you want the VWAP slope, right, to be if you want the slope of the VWAP to be in alignment, right, with your entry signals, well, then, we have a slope solver looking at the VWAP line, center line. And then, yeah, if you're looking at a crossover signal, then we have a crossover solver here, right, comparing price crossing over the VWAP line. And then lastly, add whatever kind of filters you want there, right? So, one of the other kind of filtering indicators Samarji provided as an example was like a moving average. So if you're using a moving average, then instead of an oscillator, so if it's an oscillator, right, you're going to use the threshold solver, right, because you're looking for your oscillator to be, either above some level or below some level. But if you're using a moving average, then you're going to want another slope solver, right? So you'd want to grab another slope solver and set that slope solver to whatever moving average you want to use, right? So instead of a threshold solver there. Let's see here. So Samadji says, or it closes below this standard deviation number 2 line. Yeah, so if you're actually looking for a close below the standard deviation line versus just price touching it, then, all right, let's go to our exit logic here, right? So if you want the bar to actually close below the second standard deviation line, or whichever deviation line you want, You know, if you want the close, if you want the bar to close, then it's just a matter of simply adjusting what price, right, you want to be below the lower line or above the upper line, right? So we could just change, you know, the low to the closing price and change the high to the closing price. And there you go. And so now, you know, your signals are going to adjust a little bit, because now the close of the bar has to be below the lower line. Right? So basically, these bars, signals from those bars disappeared now. Right? So if I put this back to the low, right? There we go. So we can see, right, we have long exit signals here, you know, on these three bars, right, if we use the low price. But if we go to the closing price, then, right, those signals, those exit signals disappear here. So, right, so whatever, you know, price of the bar, you know, you want to go below the lower band or above the upper band, you know, it's just a matter of changing that in input A. So, but I'll leave it on a more liberal setting here, and I'll leave it on the low and the high of the bar there. All right, so that was one follow-up question on this. Let's see, Darcy's suggesting here the entry setup may need to be adjusted, so you may not get any short the way the RSI is set. True, yeah. So yeah, Darcy, I was not given, you know, any settings for the RSI, so just, I guess, just use this, you know, as a, let's go back to the entry signals here. You know, well, again, you know, it's the thing about trading, right? Is there's just an infinite number of, you know, ideas out there. So if you do, right, want, yeah, so if you want long signals when the RSI is above 50 and short signals when the RSI is below 50, then the adjustment here would be, we're going to put 50 in all the thresholds here. And so that way, for the short output, instead of the RSI being greater than 50, we can now say, okay, we'll get a short output when the RSI is less than 50. So now I can set that to 1, like so. And voila, there we go. So there's some short signals now that just showed up there. So yeah, let's adjust that again, right? So yeah, so if for the short outputs of the RSI, you know, if it's set to greater than 50, then all we have is this one long. But if we adjust this so that we can get a short signal when the RSI is below 50, yeah, so now a few short signals show up. So that's how you would make that adjustment there. But I'm going to put it back to the way it was originally.